What is up, everyone? It is me, Todd Bookspan, the founder of Win by Noon, and I'm so excited that you're here for another Monday Win by Noon weekly webinar. And I'm grateful for my co-host today, none other than Deborah Byrd from PlugandPlaySM. What's up, Deborah?
Yay, it's Monday. Are we excited for the new week?
You know what? I'm always excited for the new week. And,
Yeah.
it was a holiday weekend, got to spend a lot of time with family, got to go to the Suns game and watch my Suns win the opening playoff game, which was a lot of fun. And then I got to shoot the breeze with you. So see, we were going to be early today, but Deborah and I are busy talking behind the scenes about totally not about this webinar, about personal finances. And so that'll be another call we'll have at some other point in life where we talk about personal finances, but that's not what this is about today. Today is really about, I titled this very interestingly, observations on what's holding you back. And so whenever I say anything like that, when I say what's holding you back, I turn the finger around and I point it back at myself, right? Because what I'm finding is as I'm out there and I'm, having the same challenges a lot of other people are having in, this unique market. And then also from talking to a lot of you, right? I've got a lot of people in my operating system group coaching and training program. And then I've got just people in my world, my team, Deborah, all these other people that we get to talk to, and I get to hear about all these challenges. So I see just a lot of people holding themselves back. And I really feel like the opportunity today is for all of us to look at ourselves and say, okay, what is it that is holding me back? Is it a belief that I have? Is it a true challenge that I have, right? Because some of the challenges I would say are legit. There's just certain things out there that we can't control, but ultimately I think that a lot of people are creating more negativity around themselves, and that's what's holding them back than other things. When I say that, Deborah, observations that are holding people back, what comes to your mind?
First thing I thought of was myself, of course, and what have I observed just in this past quarter and year? And, some of it's beliefs and some of it too is control. And I think I've always had that challenge. And no matter kind of the evolution of my career path of being able to trust others enough to do it like I would. And a lot of times when they haven't been able to, it's because it falls back on me as the leader of not setting enough time of training them and giving them the proper feedback. And my expectations were out of whack because I just expect people to read my mind. And I also learned along the way, I'm not always a great communicator. I'll leave certain words out because I'll think really fast and I think people know what I mean. And then when you assess and go to give feedback and you hear where there was confusion, it's usually a communication issue like always. But that's what first comes to my mind is there are some limiting beliefs that I think we all still need and are working through. I know I am. And then two, learning to trust more. I don't trust easily.
Trust more. All right, so tell me about that. Where do you feel like people struggle or you struggle with that?
Just having extreme expectations and wanting things to be done a certain way and fearing because of probably past occurrences of when they're not and consistently not done, even when shown multiple times. I just have very high standards. I expect things to be done right majority of the time, or, I give grace for when there's errors, but when it's the same errors over and over, I start to wonder, okay, is this a training issue? Is this a capacity issue? Like, what's the root cause? And sometimes I will avoid those difficult conversations or try to pawn it off on someone else on the team to then handle it. Cause I'll be like, clearly I'm not communicating effectively. And lately I've, if you're going 100 miles per hour with events and speaking and, making sure you also have time for yourself to refuel. Like I had to get better at taking time off before an event and after an event so I could give myself just capacity to refuel, to pour back into the team who pour into our client base. But I had made some bad hires along the way. And I think that's a hard thing, even when you're a loan officer or a real estate agent, of just when you go through those classes and those licensing trainings, they don't teach you how to run a business and how you hire and what BS maybe you have to get through when you are building a team, and how do you know and give grace for people's differences while also not expecting, I'm going to perform at a level 10 because I have the biggest piece of the pie. It's ludicrous for me to ever expect even someone who maybe could perform at a level 10, they're not the owner. So the max I may be able to get from them is like a 7 or an 8 because they're not an owner. That it's still a job for them. So, I also was a workaholic, and it's always been my life's greatest therapy. I don't, I enjoy working. I love what we do. And sometimes I would text late at night or early in the morning and think, why aren't people responding? And it's like, oh, because they have boundaries and they maybe have more of a life than I do, because this is my life a lot of times. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that I've never trusted easily, just even personally, that, it's like I always have had to have, I never had that backup plan. It was like sink or swim, and you could never sink. So there wasn't like parents I could fall back on, or even having like a home, like a hometown or home memories of like when you were growing up. We were always, even raising our parents, even to today, sort of in a way, that trusting that someone else will do it and it doesn't have to be me has just always been a constant struggle. And I envy it. Like I see my sister who had the exact same upbringing. So it's a belief thing, because here I have an identical twin who had the same upbringing, but has been able to really build a team and leverage a team. And she's gotten the hiring right from the get-go. She's always said that's kind of her secret sauce, is her team and learning to let go. But she had to be so involved in the training process, and she still is. I mean, a lot of what she does, I know people see production numbers, and she invests a lot of time to her team so that they can continue to be great. So it doesn't always have to be her.
I love it. All right. So there's a lot there to
Eh.
unpack, which is great. I would say that there's probably two things that I'll pull out, because I think it can relate to everyone here. Right. Is, one of them is communication, and then the other is busyness. Right.
Mhm.
So I'll knock out busyness real quick, because that one I think is an interesting one. You said that with all your travel that that's really does impact you, which I totally get. Right. You have to have that time to unplug and refresh. I think that's what so many people miss out on. And so it's one of the things when I'm teaching the ideal week, I always start off with, put those big rocks in there, right? As I'm planning out my whole year. You guys have heard me talk about that before, and, the personal time. But there's a coaching program out there called Strategic Coach, and he coaches entrepreneurs. And the gentleman's name is Dan Sullivan, who runs it. And Dan teaches what he calls the entrepreneurial time system. If any of you are in the real estate world and have ever been through Joe Stumpf, Joe's been through his program, and Joe teaches the exact same thing miraculously and calls it something different. But it's really what he's teaching is Strategic Coach entrepreneurial time system. And they basically have off days, on days, and buffer days. And so you're missing the buffer days and you're missing the off days. And so what they say in their program is that anytime that you're going into a weekend. So if you're going to take Saturday and Sunday off, and those are going to be truly off days. On an off day, you do not talk work. So on an off day, this is really hard. When I first learned the system, I went to Mexico with friends for a week. And it was the first time that we had, voice over internet. This was like, I don't know, 12 years ago, maybe, had voice over the internet. We had a computer that was hooked to the internet. I could have checked in with my team. I could have checked my email, but I said, you know what, I'm going away and I'm not going to do it this time. And they were shocked, number one, because they really thought that maybe my plane crashed or I got eaten by an alligator in Mexico, because they were shocked that I said I was going to do it. Because like you, I was a workaholic. And they thought I just said I was going to do it. I communicated it well, but they were in shock that I actually did it. And then more importantly, I was on the trip with another family of my friends, said, hey, I want to talk about refinance. I said, that's awesome. I can't wait to do that. Let's make sure we talk about that when we get back. Where in the old days, I would have sat there, by the pool or wherever we were in Mexico at the time. And I would have went in and pitched him on refinancing his home. And I said, I'll wait on that. So the whole key of being off is truly being off. And then what Dan Sullivan would say is that the day before and the day after, you have to create that as a buffer day, where you're kind of half in, half out, where you're creating extra time in your calendar to avoid the busyness. You can't just come right back in and do what you would normally do on a busy work day. You actually have to have time to catch up on your emails, time to catch up on the other things that you've missed out. And I feel like in mortgage and real estate, in any market, but especially this market where everyone's working so hard, that you've got to look at your calendar that way. I think that would be, really good. Look at that. Roberta just gave a seminar to 72 people. Oh my gosh, that is awesome. Congrats on that. That is really good. And then I would say from a communication perspective, I think that's where, when you're building a team, but I think also just to look at yourself, you got to kind of figure out what makes you tick, right? We know DISC, we know that, you KW realtors are using KPA. I use Colby as one of them, KOLBE. That's what they use at Strategic Coach. And the Colbys happen to be here in town, so I know the Colbys. And we use Colby and DISC in our hiring process because it's a way to look at people from two different perspectives, not just what their behavioral patterns are, but really what their MO is, how they attack a problem. And the reason I bring that up, because it helps in team building, but more importantly, I think it helps in communication, because if you understand what makes you tick first, and then you learn enough about it that I can assess how someone else is, then I can sort of determine how to best communicate with them. And the easy one right there is, DISC is, dominant, influencer, steady, and what's that word?
Compliance, right? Compliant.
Thank you. I was gonna say controlling, but that's not it. But we all know that the stereotypical C is an engineer. And, the stereotypical C is someone that wants you to read them every paragraph of the real estate contract and let them know what it all means, or they want to go through, every line on the disclosures with the loan officers on there. And most loan officers are not in that space, right? Most people are actually SCs in the real world. And then in sales and real estate, mortgage, we're all I's and D's. And therefore, we don't always have the patience, especially if you're a high D. It's only 5% of people are high Ds. Dominant, right? You want to get it done. And I don't have the patience to answer all those questions. But when you can assess that on the other end, like I knew when I was doing loans, if I was talking to an engineer, a school teacher, someone who I knew was going to be more methodical, I had to take a breath. I had to slow down. I had to communicate differently. And for me, it was really easy. Hey, awesome. Just so you know, I'm not a detail person, and my guess is that you are. They say yes. I say awesome. So what that means is I may talk too fast, or I may explain something in a way that lacks the detail for you to have the clarity you're after. I'm going to do my best to add extra clarity because I know that's who you are. And at any point that you feel like it doesn't make sense, just say, hey, time out, like slow down. I don't get it. And I won't be offended because there's 3 or 4 ways I can explain it. And I just need to make sure I find a better way to explain it. That's more in line than the way that I explained it.
That was great.
We could talk about this for 6 hours, but there we go. I talked about it in 6 minutes.
What would you say are your observations of, your biggest challenges right now? Since I just shared mine, what's Todd's?
Well, I have
and
no
those
problems.
of you on the call listening, y'all drop yours in the comments.
I have no problems. Come on, what are you talking about? No, I would say it's the busyness thing, right? It's been really hard for me because I'm like you, I'm super driven to unplug. And I've been really forcing myself to unplug on Sundays, just to unplug for one day a week and not be all in. I just kind of went back, and ironically, I just looked at that whole entrepreneurial time system and said, okay, what do I need to do differently if I'm going to be my best for the people around me? And so I decided right now I've just got too many ideas and too many things I'm working on. In an ideal world, I would take off both Saturday and Sunday. And that is my goal for later in the summer. But for now, I've just got too many projects and too many great ideas that I want to get out there. And so I'm allowing myself, gave myself permission. I got permission from my family to do that. So I would say busyness for me is a big one. And I think that impacts a lot of people. And then I also feel like, I run a team obviously in the mortgage space, and, leads are down and inventory's down, all the things that everyone is experiencing in both worlds. And then, you have to worry about fear setting in and being fearful. And that just tells me that I've got to encourage my team to look for the opportunity to create more activity, because activity creates results.
Wow. That's awesome. Okay. We got Laura and Tara that responded. So Laura said, focus. I think we can all resonate with focus. Better at social media, learn all the lending options out there, network, one-on-ones, follow up. Did I miss something I don't even know I should have known about? All I have mastered yet, is knowing my numbers because I took Todd's other class, but it might be because small numbers are easy to track.
Listen, the numbers only grow over time, right? That's the key. And it's funny because Tara says the same thing, right? Writing everything down, that you have to go into being reactive. And I think that's, again, it's just so common. It's so easy to do that. And it is, I was on my team call this morning, and my business partner runs the team call. And he said he met with 5 brand new real estate agents last week. And he said the number one conversation he was having around was lead follow-up and how are they scheduling their lead follow-up, which I thought was great because obviously he's telling me, hey, you got to follow up on that most important thing first, because if you're not following up on your leads, then everything else is going to come into play. And they're part of a fairly large team. I think most of them were, not all of them. And that large team gets a lot of leads. And apparently the team leader said he was shocked that people were actually turning off their leads, meaning they didn't want more leads. And he's like, well, that's how you're going to make money, is if you keep, leads rolling in. And they're all judged on it, right? In Arizona, the Zillow doesn't sell leads anymore. They don't give you a zip code and you put your picture on there and smile there. They've got what's called the Flex program, and they actually convert the leads. They give them to the team, and then they take a 35% referral fee on it. And so these are like real, somewhat legitimate people wanting to buy houses. And, the team is struggling getting agents to actually want to follow up on them. They've got a lot of leads. Imagine how that works. That they're just shocked that people don't want to work that hard either, which I don't think that's any of you. You wouldn't be here watching this or watching the recording if you didn't want to work hard. All right, what do we have,
Jeremy? I'm terrified of not communicating effectively, looking stupid. I just ended a business relationship today that played a lot into the belief that I'm not good at what I do. I also don't trust people. It takes a lot for me to trust someone, but when I do, I'm all in.
Man, what transparency. I love that. And it's hard. I do think there was a guy named Jim McMahon who Jim was spoke on a lot of stages back when I first got in the business. And he always said, there's plenty of people who do business my way, so I don't have to do business with those who won't. I don't know if it was his quote or he stole it from someone else, but he's the person who I always heard say it all the time. And, I think that's, especially for newer people that, if anyone ever didn't have the belief in me that I knew what I was doing, then that wouldn't be a great relationship to have. I mean, anyone who would, want to second guess someone. We had a team when I was originating and that we worked with, and the realtor bugged me because they had a policy where they wanted a pre-qualification as quick as possible. So they wanted what we called a credit only pre-qual, right? You pulled credit and maybe, probably didn't even run to you, just send out the pre-qual. And what she would say is, if it doesn't close, we're okay with it. We don't expect many to close. And she was being coached by another team that we worked with at the time that my team still works with today. And they said that they expected when we issued a credit only pre-qual that only 8 out of 10 or 3 out of 4, whatever you'd say, would actually close. They assumed that some of them would blow up, and they were actually okay with it. And so they both said the same thing. But the one team truly believed it. If you said in the end, gosh, you know what, sorry, you went under contract, good thing it's during 10-day inspection period. We ran a DU and it doesn't work there, whatever. They just took a 1099 job, whatever it was. They'd be like, oh, well, that's all right. I'll go get the next one because I know that 1 out of 4 is not going to actually qualify. Now, the other team, if it didn't work, and even though they said they were okay with it, they wanted you to give it CPR and try to figure out what to do. And then they wanted to send it to another lender for a second opinion. And I'm like, nope, that doesn't work for me. If you're going to not trust that we did the right thing, it's not like this is an overlay. It's not like, there's something there, these are the rules and it doesn't work, and, live with it. So it was a trust factor that they had with, not just with us, but they had 2 lenders with the other lender as well. But 100% of the time that they would send the file to the other lender to look at, they said, yep, Todd's right, they can't do it. And then I think part of the trust came in is that we didn't have the overlays that the other lender had, so we could save some of their deals. But, she still didn't believe me that there probably wasn't someone who could save ours. Not that I thought we were perfect or that there was no one out there that would do it, but that was before non-QM was back and all those kinds of things. So, I get it. I totally get it. Thanks, Jeremy, for sharing that.
Kristen Cooper kind of said a similar thing as I think we all have said or can relate to, is just difficulty of finding time to get everything done. Guidelines, partner check-ins, partner trainings, database management, client experience, team training, lead follow-up, pre-approval review for updates, marketing on top of reviewing referrals for mortgage options. It's just over and over every day, finding the time.
Well, that's why I bring out my planner, and there's my week for the week, right? I couldn't find my highlighters this morning. I was all excited to do it, but ultimately it's my proactive activity in the morning. And then if you read really close down here in the afternoon, it says react really big, right? And so for me, I think that's the days where I practice what I preach, right? Because I'm not perfect. Not every day goes the way that I anticipate it's going to go. And the days that I practice what I preach is where I'm doing those proactive activities first, the things that have to get done. And then you got to schedule the rest, right? If you don't have an assistant, right? There's a saying, if you don't have an assistant, you are your assistant. And so I do understand that. A lot of times loan officers are like, well, Todd, you were really spoiled. You had assistants and all those things. And I did. But before I had those people that worked for me, I had to schedule the time to get that stuff done. And so that would be my encouragement for you is look at your schedule. It goes back, if, those of you who heard me say it before, ironically, I'm recording in a real estate office, and the guy, he's not here this morning, but he sits downstairs below me where I'm recording this from. And he's the guy who said to his real estate team of 50, you got in this reason. I'm really pointing today a lot. I don't like to point. You got in this business, but he pointed at all his people. You got in this business to set your own hours. And that is the exact reason you fail. And I look at it because there's a couple guys downstairs. I'm probably working out of this office like 3 days a week right now. And they've got at least 10 agents. And maybe once I've seen them all here. Maybe sometimes on Mondays they're all here, but even this morning there's 3 people down there dialing, and then I'm again, I'm not one to judge them. I don't really know what their plan is. They're probably at home doing the activities that they're supposed to be doing in the privacy of their home and not having someone in a cubicle next to them. But Joe said to his team, you got in this business, set your own hours, and that's the exact reason you fail. And so what I'd be doing is, again, you got to schedule those activities. So if I had to schedule time to work on my database, it would be in my calendar as on-time work on my database. If I was a real estate agent, I had to prepare my listing presentation and pull together comps, I would be scheduling time. Okay, that normally takes me 45 minutes to an hour. Great. I'm going to schedule an hour on Tuesday afternoon to do that. If I'm a loan officer and I got a new application in, or, that I would be scheduling time in the afternoon after I scheduled all my other stuff. And I'd say, okay, great. I'm going to work on that application from, noon to 1. I'm going to work on that application from 3 to 4, but you just have to schedule the time. And I tend to find, as simple as that sounds, it's super hard to execute. So I'm not saying that, again, I'm not perfect at it, but I would take all the things that you've got to do in a day. The people in my group coaching right now are doing the least exciting exercise that I give them. And it's to track their time for a minimum of 2 days and ideally 5 days. So literally they're writing in 20-minute increments. What did they do? Because ultimately what you have to look at is what of the times that you're doing are actually productive, what is proactive and what is reactive. And then more importantly is schedule the most important stuff first, but schedule everything else too. You've got to create the time for it. And you can get really granular. You can schedule time. Like for me, what I need to do is schedule time. It's not in my calendar, but I'm saying in full disclosure, because Deborah's sitting over there in my screen, is social media time. Like that's the reason it doesn't get done, is I don't schedule it. And what gets scheduled gets done.
So one thing that Kristen added to that was she's tried using a planner. She also uses a CRM and her calendar for tracking. And sometimes, when using the planner, it just then feels like one more thing to do. So she's attempted several times at this, but do you have any feedback on how to integrate maybe your planner and Jungo and Outlook in a more streamlined fashion so it doesn't feel like another task?
I don't use my CRM. I mean, the CRM is good because it gives you a task and tells you when to do things. But the problem, what I find is that most CRMs give you so many tasks and people just dismiss them and they don't use it. So I don't use a CRM to give me tasks. I use my CRM proactively, and I guess I can explain that. So, so again, for me, here's my today's calendar, right? So it says right here, my team call this morning. I was dialing this morning. I went to the realtor luncheon. I had 30 minutes in the car to drive here, and I jump on here and I schedule this for 45 minutes. Even though our goal is 30 minutes, Deborah and I always go 45 minutes. And then I've got reaction time in the afternoon. And so, and I was telling Deborah, like I do the Win by Noon weekly quote, and I'll sit here. I won't leave this little office I'm in, this little recording room, until I get it recorded. And so I'll record it real quick in Zoom when I get done, and then I'll save it and I'll schedule it to go out later. But so for me, number one, I write it down. And so it's all in my phone, right? So again, for me, what everything's in my iPhone. So I've got all my stuff in here. So, all of my stuff gets in there, but again, I don't want to be getting on my phone, because what happens to me, this may not happen to any of you, but I get on there, I open it up to look at Outlook, and then I see Facebook and Instagram, and I see my email and all those other things that I can look at, sports scores, just you name it, I can see it. So for me, I don't want to look at it there. So I look in the morning, this morning, and I wrote out today, and I do it in the morning because number one, it's top of mind. I know what my schedule looks like. I'm less likely to forget things. And then I can also say, hey, is that really important? So, 2 weeks ago, this luncheon, I've committed to go to this lunch as often as I can with these realtors, because the leader of it likes me to be there to give my 2 cents. Which is great. I love that he wants me to be there. But, 2 weeks ago, I looked at my Monday, I said, I just can't do it. So you know what? I edited it, I deleted it out of there. And so for me, I look at my day here and then I can write in anything that needs to be written in that has a time. If I say, hey, I'm going to call you, Deborah, at 4:00, then I'm going to write in there 4:00 in my calendar. It's not going to get to Outlook today. And I'm going to put it in there. And then if it's something that I say I'm going to do, I've got, about a dozen things on my to-do list for today. My most important personal stuff is at the top, and then my other things that are below it. And I just go through. Normally I highlight them off, but today I'm just using the pen, striking through with the pen as I go through, and I get everything done. But it's my brain dump, so it's sitting there in front of me. I've got my to-do list of all the people I need to call before the end of the day. One of them is I got to get on and do a something on the computer, like just, it's context based where it's at. But for me, that's why I use this. It's visual. It's right there in front of me. And it's not 3 different systems I'm trying to integrate. I actually pull it all and I use this one system to get it done. And I find it's way easier. I find most people who try to use just electronic things, because I would love to be paper free, don't get me wrong, but I tend to find it fails because it's not in front of you. You got to pick it up to look at it, to figure out what's going on. Where here, just sitting there right on my desk, I can write in there. If someone says, hey, can you call me at 3:00 tomorrow? I can just go to the next page at 3:00 and I can write their name in there, and it's in my planner, and my planner's with me. I'm nerdy, right? I went to my lunch, it sat there with me. I took my notes in it. They're on this side. And then while I'm sitting there thinking about things that I have to do, or my phone, guess what? My phone was ringing, and I, again, tried not to be distracted by it. But once I walked out, I sat in my car before I drove. I looked at who called me. I wrote everyone's name that I need to call back, and I prioritized who's the most important call. I told Deborah I was talking to my financial advisor because that was my most important call. He called me while I was in there and said, hey, nothing urgent, but call me when you have a chance. And I knocked that call out because I was driving. I could do that versus other calls where I want to take notes or do other things. And so that's a really long answer to answer that. Now, the last thing I'll say is that in my CRM, the way that I use my CRM to do what I need to do is it's groups it in there. So like, think about lead calls for a second. I don't want an email or an alarm popping up saying, call Deborah Byrd, she's a lead. What I want to be able to do is go into my CRM, click my leads, sort it by date for next call. And so again, you might have to use an unused field in your CRM. For that, it could be some other number field that you have, and you just put a date in there. But I actually sort it by date, and then I've got it, and I can do all those calls proactively together. And that's how you become more efficient, because instead of having to look every time it bings you and tells you to make a call like a Pop-Tart, I can actually just go in there, sort it out, and see who do I have to call today, make those calls first in my call time, and then it's done. But you have to make sure that every time you finish a call or leave a voicemail, you set the next call so that you have it done. So that's how I've done my CRM to make it work, but it's not how I manage my day. I manage it based on the time. My time says lead calls. I go in the CRM, I sort the list of leads by next call, and then I'm off to the races. Dang, that was a lot. That make any sense? What questions do you guys have on that?
I think that made perfect sense. I've gotten really good at using the planner as well. It's just then making sure I have it with me. But I know if it's in my phone, I make it a practice before end of day. A bit, I go back and reflect, because even we were on a group text. I think it was Friday, and I had misread the text twice. And you had even said, Todd, you're like, reread the text. And I reread it, and I still thought I understood it. And it wasn't until I was actually talking to Adam and I read it out loud, and that's when I was like, oh wait, now I'm catching on. But what I've made as just a practice for me is at the end of each day, I go back through my text messages, because I get a lot sometimes in DMs and Facebook Messenger and emails. And I've now just started writing it down so that I always have, okay, who did I say I was going to follow up with in a week, or who do I need to make a custom bid for? Or, did I get just different tasks? And I know if I have it in my planner, it's going to get done, because if I do have even the calendar invite reminders, as soon as I go to my Outlook, I'm going to get in that dark hole of emails. And I don't know what's worse, my phone with notifications or my emails, that I get so many just Calendly invites and requests that I have to put them in folders, and I'll glaze over them and I'll miss them if I do that. So I have to take the time and make sure that at the end of each day, I go back, what promises did I make? Is it in my planner? Because my calendar and my planner are what literally own my day. And I have clients that will call me, hey, can we chat real quick? And I'm like, no, actually we can't, because my calendar literally owns my day. And if I get off just a bit, it's going to derail the rest of the day. And then I get overwhelmed and the days just last longer. So I've really made it a practice of writing it down, but then taking the time to reflect so that it's already done for the next day. When I start the day, I don't have to have that worry in my head of, did I do this? And I think maybe moms or women in general, that may not be true, but we're always thinking. It's that whole, when people are eating at the table, the man is like fork, food, mouth, fork, and we're already thinking of like all the things ahead of
Who's going to wash
schedule
the
of what we
dishes?
yeah, like, when you have kids that are little, do you have the bottles? Do you have the diaper bag? Are there diapers in there? Do we have rash medicine? Like, you're always thinking ahead, and the man is just like food, fork, mouth. So I had to learn how to shut that off because it was draining my battery too much, where I was exhausted. And it's because I was always worried I was forgetting something, or who did I not follow up with? But that worry goes away when you learn to trust yourself through a process. And I don't remember your quote that you say, Todd, but you always default back to the systems you have. I think, is it something, how does that quote go?
I don't know which quote you're talking about. See, that's my
Oh,
brain doesn't work that way, but that's all right. I like that. Well, and you nailed something here that I want to highlight is that at the end of the day, you've got time scheduled to do that. And so
mhm.
it's really important when you're running around. So when, COVID was happening and no one went anywhere, and I sat at my desk all day, then every time I made a commitment, because that's what you just said, Deborah, I'd love is, hey, I don't want to let people down by not doing something I committed to. And so it was at my desk all day. I just did it as I was going through the day, right? That's, that was easy. But on like today, I'm in the car, out of the car, running around. And that's when I said I had to sit in my car and I had to look at my phone and see, okay, what were my messages, what I need to get done. And that's where, if you're running around, especially, real estate agents, I think you all suffer from it the most because you're the ones who are going around and your job is meeting people and showing houses and doing listings. And then I think for loan officers, when you're out there now trying to build your business, build new relationships, you're going out, hopefully you're not driving to a client's house to meet them to take loan applications, but I did that when I first got into business. I don't think that that's kind of a cool thing anymore. So I don't know too many loan officers to do that, but I do know that, you're running around there meeting with real estate agents on their turf, not on yours, because it's just hard to get, that's just part of the price you pay, I guess, to build a relationship. And so I find that the more I'm moving around, then the more difficult that is. And where I first saw this, kind of be a sort of a highlight is when we did our first cross-country trip with our RV, a couple of years ago, right when COVID hit. And my wife I was driving because we had this rented trailer that was like this, I could barely keep the thing under control myself. It wasn't nearly like the Airstream bought after that. That was like straight as an arrow. My wife loved driving. But she's like, oh my gosh, she felt like she was my secretary, but I had my headset in and she was literally taking notes and doing all the stuff. And she was like, holy smokes. Like, I didn't realize just how much you do in a day. But it's great because she knows my system. So she did it all. And I was really grateful to have that piece of it. So I think that, the bottom line is that, you get what you tolerate. So if you tolerate chaos, you're going to get chaos. If you take the time, it takes time to be more organized. And so the last thing I'd throw in there too is make sure you got that, I call it the white space, right? So if you have, different meetings, don't make it all so tight. Like this is a stressful call for me to get on because I leave that focus on success. And of course, there's all these realtors and financial advisors who want to come up and shoot the breeze and say hi to me. And I'm like, oh, sorry, got to go, people. And so I actually make it an effort to come earlier. And they all know now if they want to talk to me to show up before the event, because I'm going to be there 10 or 15 minutes early at minimum. And I'll come earlier if someone wants to chat, but they know kind of when it ends, I've got a 5-minute window to shake hands and kiss babies. And then I'm out so that I can get and have 5 minutes of sitting here at the desk, getting it done. But that's tighter than I would like it to be. I'd actually love it if I had 30 minutes to debrief and do that. So keep that in mind as well. Kind of go back to that buffer day thing I talked about before and just think about it during your day. You kind of need to have those buffer periods as well.
Good. All
Dang,
right.
I feel like we talked about a lot today.
Yeah. I keep watching the clock, making sure I don't cause you to go too far over. I feel like I'm usually the talker.
Well, they all know it, right? Every time we say, hey, let's make this 30 minutes, although we didn't say it today, because I was like, all right, I got 45 on my calendar, but our goal is to respect your time as well. You all love the fact that you all show up every week when you're watching this live or you're watching this in the video, in the YouTube channel. Although I would say the last 2 weeks are literally sitting on my desktop here. I've not uploaded them yet. I have to schedule time for that. I thought about that this morning when I was like, gosh, I want to close these windows, but if I close these windows on my computer, I will never upload these videos.
Have you thought about doing it on StreamYard?
This?
Yeah, because it'll auto upload to YouTube for you. So you're taking one action.
That would be great. You know what? Here's why I got stuck, because I did a screenshot of you and I side by side and the image was too big to load it into YouTube for the image. And I have to either take a picture of it or I have to Google how to make it a lower resolution so I can get on there. So that's my full disclosure. I actually went to upload it 2 weeks ago, but I'm like, all right, I either gotta, or I just have to come up with a better promo.
I can help you with that.
All right. People are saying thank you to us. So that's their hint that they want us to be done.
Yes.
All right. So what's your bow you want to put on this, Deborah?
I would say do a belief audit of what you're telling yourself, those affirmations of not having enough time, being so busy, not knowing how to get it all done. I think at the end of the day, when you just sit down and you take your planner and you do your ideal week and you put those big blocks, just start there. I would say if you just started there and the list that I think it was Kristen where she put, when do you train your team? When do you, all those items you listed out, plant them in your calendar so that you have them there, and then take action for this next week. So make sure you tune in next week on Monday's call so we can do a follow-up to see how it went. But just all those things you worry about, put them in your time block and execute them and see how it goes, and give yourself permission to not do it perfectly. That was one thing I had to learn along the way, is like, I kept grading myself like, oh, I put the time block here and I didn't get it done. And I allowed myself to get distracted with this because it was instant gratification. And now I'm paying for it now, so give yourself some grace and just keep building from there. And a little bit of progress is what the goal is. And over time, it just ends up getting better and better. So that would be my biggest takeaway for you all, is audit your beliefs and start with the ideal week.
Love it. All right. I don't know that I could say it much better than that. I think this was an opportunity for you to look in the mirror and say, what's getting in my way? And then I think we landed on busyness and the inability to prioritize. And I think that you nailed it, that the way to do it is to take a look at it. So I would say, depending on what time zone you're in, right? If it's the end of your day today, just look and say, okay, what do I need to get scheduled on my calendar for tomorrow? If you're West Coast, you can certainly look at, hey, what do I want to make sure I get done the rest of the day today? But I think most importantly, just sit down at the end of the day today or first thing in the morning, and then write out what your schedule is. If you don't have to have a planner, you just have a piece of paper, write out who you need to call if there's no specific time to call them, and then just own your day. Make sure that you prioritize your most important events first, and then make sure that you schedule those things, as Deborah mentioned, that aren't a priority, and so that you make sure that you get it done. And then just tune in next week. Let us know how you did, because we do this for you all. So as always, I want to appreciate you, Deborah. I do appreciate, Deborah, you being on here and being part of this. It's immensely better, not just me talking, even though I go on long rambles. And thanks all of you for taking the time to be part of the community. I think it's really great that we have all of you here, and we'll keep being here, and we'll keep doing our best to add value each week. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, and someday Deborah's going to make me do some embarrassing TikTok dance as a result. So thank you much.
Bye, guys.
All right, guys. See you later.